the, it might want you to say yes to something.
I think I did. Is it?
Great. It's recording. Okay. So welcome to this summit called Moms Making Magic. And welcome to Kirsten Tyrrel.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here. And I love that even though we're in different parts of the world, we can sit here and connect over something that I'm excited about. And I love that you're excited about. So thank you for inviting me to be a part of this.
Of course, sure. Anytime. I might do it again.
Please do. So, it's needed.
Yeah, it's so great that we can sit so many miles apart and still, have a connection.
Yes.
And I'm trying with this Moms Making Magic. It sounds so big and huge, and actually it is, but mostly on the inside, because I thought that I started late in life doing what I really wanted. I didn't start late, but I started too small, It made me sick not doing this all the time. And this thing for me is singing, songwriting, writing children's books, adult books, making projects of any kind concerning this music and singing and writing. Yeah. And I did it in my spare time all the time. And I waited to get off of work to go home and do these things. But I was also a mom. So that's the thing why I do this, Moms Making Magic, trying to inspire moms, going for their dreams, because it can make you sad and unsatisfied if you don't do it.
Yeah.
Also for me, it made me sick. I got stress several times, and now it has to stop. Now I have to do this full time. So I will try to do that in some way.
Yeah.
And that's why I need your stories. Your story and other moms' stories, entrepreneurs that want something that comes from the heart.
Yeah.
So, Kirsten.
Let's do that.
Let's hit it. Could you tell me, where are you seated? Who are you? What is your background? Anything you like?
Things.
Yeah.
Well, first, even before I launch into me, I just want to say, I know that feeling that you have with really wanting to create that magic. Like, it's a pull. It's you can't really turn it off. It doesn't go away. And I think we spend a lot of time trying to suppress that. And we think, becoming a mom means that's the ultimate. That's all we should want to do. And it is a beautiful calling. And I think it's amazing. But we have to remember that we're whole people. We're individual people who had dreams and goals before we became mothers. And those don't go away, as much as sometimes you kind of wish they would, right? It's like, my life would be so much easier if I did not want to do anything besides take care of my children. But when you spoke about like songwriting and singing, I grew up with, I was the kid who's like, I'm absolutely going to be a singer, no matter what, come hell or high water, this is going to happen. It wasn't just like, I'll be a singer, an actress, or model. It was like, I'm going to be a singer. And I'm like you, that passion is so ingrained. And one of the limiting stories that I believed for so long that makes me sick now, that makes me really sad. And sorry, I keep looking back between like the camera and you. So I just need to pick. I'm just going to look at you. So it's not going to look like I'm looking at you. I think we all know how Zoom works at this point. Anyway, all those years kind of thought that if I didn't sound like Celine Dion, if I didn't have the exact same, edge to my voice, that it wasn't good enough for fame. And so I'm actually a really good imitator. I can sing like a lot of different people, and I can speak like a lot of people. If I spend enough time with you, I can talk just like you. Are you the same way?
Yeah.
And it's almost a fault, because it took me a very long time to find my own voice. And I feel like I'm still finding it in terms of music. I feel like I'm beginning to step into it in business and as a mother. And I'm grateful that and I'll share my story, but I'm grateful that I lived a very big experiences in a short period of time, because I feel like there's a lot of wisdom that I've gained that I think it takes people a lot longer to get to. So I'm grateful for that. But I just wanted to acknowledge, I know what that's like. And I'm excited that you're finally sharing your magic and that you're not suppressing that. And just also say it's not too late, right? Like, I know it feels like it's too late, but it's not too late.
No.
A lot of times, like, we step into that right when we're supposed to. It feels like we missed it a few times, and maybe there were chances, but but really at the moment that it happens, that's those experiences you needed of missing out and not going for it make you so much more bold when you finally do. So I'm excited to see what you continue to create in the world, because that wisdom and that, like, finally not caring about all the stuff that holds you back, I think it makes you 10 times more powerful than if you had started when you thought was the perfect time.
Yes.
So yeah, I'm excited to see what you do. And I'm so happy to be here to share my story. So I don't know, where should I begin? I feel like I've been an entrepreneur longer than I knew I was an entrepreneur. You know, I actually didn't have any examples of entrepreneurship in my life, except for a grandma. And I was close to her, but I didn't live near her. And I knew that she had all these little side hustles. She sold real estate. She was like the welcome wagon lady in her city. And she always was doing something to make money. And that's probably the only example I had of entrepreneurship. But she was my grandma. She was much older. So that was just like, I thought that was what you do in retirement. I didn't see her doing that while she was raising her children, you know? And I had a very traditional household where my dad worked, my mom stayed home with us. And that's what I thought I wanted for my life. And I thought people who were entrepreneurs were just people who couldn't hold a job or didn't have anything else to do with their time.
Yeah.
So I didn't have a very clear example of, and I think even my generation has really kind of paved the way to the internet, making this way for you to be both an entrepreneur and a stay-at-home mom at the same time.
Okay.
And that before you kind of had to choose, right? And so I've always done something to kind of supplement our income. And after I became a mom, which I thought that was it, like, I just want to be a mom, I just want to have children. After I had my first son, it didn't take long before I was restless, and I decided to go back to school and finish my degree. And after that, it was just like, okay, now what? And I started a photography business and just kept going from there. And it wasn't until 6 years ago that I stepped into the online space. And to say that I had no idea what I was doing is such an understatement. Like, I think it's so great to look back and shudder a little bit because you recognize how far you've come. But I just had all the wide-eyed ambition. I had some friends who were they were millionaires. And I was like, they're just a little bit older than me. They have the same amount of children. Like, I could totally do this too. So that was just the goal. Like, I'm going to become a millionaire in a year. Why not? Because that just happens with no experience, no business whatsoever. And so I just started, and I started with a podcast called Marvelous Moms Club because I was kind of finding myself in that rut of not knowing who I was and not feeling like, my husband was kind of like, you need to maybe see a therapist. You probably need to get on some medication. Like, I was just, and that's not to downplay like mental health, because it was at that level. And I said, okay, I'm not opposed to that, but I want to try something first. I really want to try, expanding my time and doing something that fulfills me beyond taking care of the kids. And again, I was running the photography business. I was connected to other people. It's just, I wanted more of a challenge. And so when I started that, it was really to share that journey with other mothers and bring them along with me and do the same thing that you're doing, encourage them to, I used to say, like, don't settle for mediocrity. And now I cringe a little bit because I'm like, I hope people didn't think I was calling them mediocre, just to not, to not settle. And this ideal that you had for the type of mother that you wanted to be, you shouldn't let that die just because it gets hard. You should keep striving to do your very best, because at one point you did have a vision of who you could be as a mother. So it was very mom focused, and it evolved. And then I stepped into other businesses. I got into sales, and I ended up generating 7 figures within 3 years of starting my business, which is crazy. That doesn't happen very often. So I had this very unrealistic version of how easy it is to be successful with an online business. And then everything fell apart about 2.5 years ago. And I've had to since rebuild and rebuild myself. And, everybody says there's so much fear of well, what if I fail? I did it. And I didn't personally fail. I was definitely in a weird situation where I didn't take my own power, and I was in a vulnerable position where other people could kind of take things away. But yeah, it was, anyway, so this is a lot to pack into a very short story. But yeah, I've lived it.
What happened 2 years ago? Do you know that?
I was working for a company, and they suspended me and kicked me out of the company. I was at the very top of the company in sales, and making a really, really, really good income. And just a lot of things kind of led up to, I basically got a little bit too powerful, a little bit too influential. And so they found a loophole and they found a way to take that from me. So I literally had to start over, and all of the things, like I lived in that status of having it all, the things that we think that we're striving for. You know, I had all the things that I had ever wanted, but I was actually really, really empty inside. And I had a great family. I was fulfilled by everything there. But in terms of business, I had been in this like trajectory of like, oh, if I could just hit this 7-figure goal, then I'll be happy and I'll be fulfilled. And now I've had to come back and kind of, I got to the top of the mountain and I've come back down, and now I'm in this beautiful place where I'm not in the valley, but I'm like on a very steady ascent up a beautiful hill instead of this steep climb up a mountain that I'm going to fall off of. So I've come full circle to where I can still say with confidence that you should go for your dreams. But I also have this wonderful, not disclaimer, but this extra added advice that you cannot be afraid of failure, because the chances are that you in some capacity are going to fail. You're going to be embarrassed. People are going to judge you. That's inevitable. But I've survived it, and it was so liberating, and I've become such a different person. And if you're not willing to feel that kind of growth, then entrepreneurship probably isn't for you. Going for your dreams is probably not going to be fun, because you have to be willing to take the bitter to get to the sweet, and be okay with it being all of those things wrapped up into one. Well, we can talk more about this, but I had a lot of like fear and sadness after seeing how much I had succeeded and how much I had worked, wondering like, did I neglect my family all those years? Like, was I just living in this crazy like dreamland? And I had to go back and like re-look at my life. And my brain wanted to tell me that I had failed my family, that I had just been a workaholic. But what I actually saw was that my family evolved with my passion, with my drive, with my work. And not only was I able to provide awesome experiences and vacations, but even more importantly, I was able to kind of help mold this example of what it looks like to work hard and go for something big. And I think that's the ideal that a lot of us want to show our children. But we battle that fear of like, but what if in so doing we wreck our family?
To be a role model.
Yeah. So I have like a daughter, she's 7, she's almost 8 right now. And I started to wonder, like, she can play very independently. She has a huge imagination. And on the one hand, I was asking myself, has she had to do that because I haven't had as much time to sit on the floor and play with her? Oh my gosh, like she's so like, she's such a loner and it's my fault. And I realized, no, this is who she was, and she needed a mother who didn't coddle and sit with her. And I mean, I definitely, she's my princess. She's my only girl. So she's not been neglected by any stretch of the imagination, but yeah, our mind likes to play tricks on us, and it likes to make us feel guilty for things we do not need to feel guilty about.
Yeah. Maybe that's what happened when you talked about you were in this company and you were high on sales. And maybe on the way to this successful thing or the hill or wherever we're going, we might forget the real, what drove us at the beginning. We might forget always to think, why do I want this? What are my inner values? What is really important to me? Because it's actually not the money.
No.
Sorry. It's more than that. It's something inside. I think I've heard a lot of both podcasts and TED Talks and things about the mindset. And do you think that we forget this when we get at the top at some point, because it's driving us in itself? So maybe we lose this really powerful inner mindset that we had at the beginning.
Yeah, I think that we do. And what I've observed, I've been able to have the privilege of collaborating with a lot of people who have done even more than I have, who've been very successful. And I see a pattern that happens to pretty much everyone. And the way that they deal with it at a certain point varies depending on the character of the person. But overall, even very good people get kind of in this trap of, you feel really passionate about songwriting and music and singing. And so you start to follow that dream, and it actually starts to work out and things happen. And really the reason you did it was to share your gift and you're a creative, But then you've suddenly become this person who also has to be an executive of like a business. And you have to make different decisions based on what's going to be profitable and staying ahead of the competition. And you get in the world of the industry instead of the passion of the craft and the art that you're doing. And so we kind of lose ourselves in that when we start cycling through this, like, oh my gosh, then you're just playing these numbers games and it's all about strategy. And there's not that you lose all authenticity, but it definitely suffers. And I've seen to where that makes people completely lose sight of even who they were when they started their thing, because now they have to keep up with this image and this character and this role of what everybody defined them as when they became more of like a public figure, you know, or when their business became such and such a thing. And it loses. It's not that you necessarily planned on changing as a person and that all along you were just, you know, I wouldn't even have considered myself like in it for the money. It was just like the concept, the idea of creating more for my life was so exciting. And I had other reasons, of course, you know, like I was very driven to help mothers, and it wasn't just, oh, what's something I can do to make money? But over time, it became so much about like staying successful and making money and pushing myself in more and more and more. And I've realized, sadly, like there's never going to be enough. There's never enough success. There's never enough money. And you have to be anchored in something different. And I think a lot of us have to learn it the hard way. Like people listening are going to hear me say this and say, I don't know, I'm different. That would never happen to me. And it probably will on some measure, at least one time before you really find yourself. And now in the business that I'm doing, like it is so service driven, and it is coming from a place of I'm not a whole person if I'm not serving women, if I'm not doing some kind of business, if I'm not using my talents, because they are talents, they are gifts, the things that I felt drawn to learn, that I've excelled at. Like if I don't use them, I will go crazy, you know, I will become sick and anxious, like you said. And that really couldn't have come, the centeredness and this calm in business had to come after the crazy, frazzled, you know, hype and the hustle, you know, like I did very much live in the hustle, and now I live in the bustle. I don't know. No, the bustle's another word. I live in a very peaceful place.
Yeah, that's great. And that's where you're supposed to be.
Yeah.
And the mindset about not thinking money and fame, but to think service. How can I do what I do best and then service people or give service to people and make them feel better? I think I started thinking this a year ago, maybe, because I had heard someone tell me this. And I thought, well, I want to earn money. I have to live off this. So I thought about the economy all the time. And then I had my stuff going on the sideline. But when I started thinking, how can I do what I do and still be at service? And that changed something in my mindset, because now they go along. They're not separated. Now they go along, and it gives much more sense, and it makes it easier to have the mindset all the way, and not, I hope, not end at the top and then going down with a bang, because I'm not with myself. I don't have my heart with me. I don't have my values. So that changed a lot for me to think the service thing. But I didn't think that. When I'm looking at what I have done, I've made a poems book for children, and I made it into a song book, and I made an album. And when I look at them, I can see that what you're supposed to think and discuss when you read these things, it's kind of a service, but I didn't think of that. It is to make people connect and remember what is important. But now it makes sense for me. That was just about me. But you talked about being a role model, or I said the word role model, but you said, I actually showed my family that I can do this, and I do it because if I don't, it will make me how crazy. Not a good person. You still be a good person, but something happens when you don't work with your values and your dreams. So
that's absolutely true.
So how do you see your family now? How did you work with being a mom and a business owner? How did that work out?
I definitely didn't do it by myself. My husband and I were running business together. So there was a lot of tag teaming involved there. And I do believe that was like an advantage that a lot of moms and women don't have. A lot of times their husband is working, providing like that steady income, and they're building it on the side on top of taking care of children. So in some ways, I feel like I cheated the system. But at the same time, we did all of this without that steady paycheck. Everything was on the line all the time for the last like 6 years. We've just been kind of making it up as we go. But I definitely had help where I wasn't doing all the things by myself. And I also had, at some point when things got really busy, I had help with childcare. Like my sister would come and take care of the kids while I got some work done. So that's how I facilitated that. And that's actually been what's the most difficult about rebuilding the business in the last few years is I decided to homeschool my children. Yeah. This is our 3rd year of homeschool. So there's really no divide. And I've had to get very, very creative with prioritizing. We can't prioritize more than one thing, right? I learned that this year or last year that to be a priority, it literally is the most important thing. Yeah. And so as a mother, that's very difficult because you're like, but my family is my priority. But that also entails what I've kind of had to understand is providing for that family is still part of the same priority, right? Like nurturing and building a home for my family, making sure they have the best possible opportunity. That includes providing financially. And that includes providing their education now because I added that layer. So even though I have all these different things that I have to manage, the top priority is my family, it's my children. So anything that I'm asked to do or that I feel called to do, I have to make sure that it fits within that. And that also means like, I loved it. It was so much fun to have, the success that I had before. And it meant a lot of like glamorous things. And it was a wonderful little bonus. But I've also kind of realized now that there's a certain level of value that I can provide to my family without needing to live like a big dream. And it almost like pains me inside a little bit to say that because it goes against everything that me 5 years ago would have said of like, don't settle, like live your big dreams. But like I was saying before, there's just this different kind of piece around it to where I can say, you know what, I do need to provide for my family financially. I do feel called to serve other people. So how can I still do that? How can I facilitate this? And it just isn't going to look like it used to. It's not going to mean that I'm a huge social media influencer. It's not going to mean that my business requires a lot of my face to be successful. You know what I mean? And so I feel like you really have to look at your life and what that priority is. And it's okay if that priority is like, I want my time. I want to shine. I want to be a superstar. I want to be, extremely successful and I want to have all those things. That's okay. Like if that's what you're feeling called to, it's just recognizing what needs to happen for all of the other things to still be taken care of. What is that going to look like for your family? How can you kind of decide what experiences that's going to offer? What are they going to be able to learn and see and gain from this? And what kind of people are they going to be able to become because you've chosen that path, And so I don't know if that answered your question, but for me, it's evolved so much because my presence and my need as a mother has changed. And people always told me this when I started my podcast. My kids were little. They were like all under 5. And now my oldest is 12 and my youngest is almost 8. And people always said, you think it's going to get easier when they're not in diapers and when they're not needing to be like kept alive. And they said, but it actually gets harder. They have different needs. And I'm like, I'm starting to see that there's a lot more talking. There's a lot more feelings. It's just a different level. So I've had to find a place where I can be very present for my children and not just in like, okay, I'm going to feed you. And then when it's your nap time, I'm going to work. I have to make sure that everything is really like centered in the home. And then the work, it still has to have its time, but it definitely comes lower on the totem pole than it used to. So
can you separate your work from the homeschooling? How do you get time alone for doing your stuff? Is it only when they have a break?
It's so tricky and we're still finding our flow. So I do like a couple hours in the morning of school with them, 2 or 3 hours. And then they do a Zoom call. They're part of like this kind of online class. Yeah. So they do that for about an hour and a half. So I usually work during that break on a good day when they're not up asking for snacks and not paying attention to their Zoom call.
Put the snack in it.
Yes.
Put them on the desk. Yeah.
Yeah. And then my husband's still home. So there's still some tag teaming that goes on to where I know if he can be tuned in and managing what's going on in the house, then I can work. And also like they have an hour of reading time. So when they're doing reading, if I have work that I need to do, I work during the reading time because it's quiet and I don't have to worry, that they're getting into stuff. Because even though they are older, they're still mischievous and they, children, they know when their parents aren't paying attention and they can really manage to do some stuff, right? I know, so yeah, it's not ideal. I used to love having like dedicated time and now I'm finding myself, that's kind of my goal this year is to find a really, really good structure to where each thing is getting a lot more valuable time and not just like, oh, I have an hour, I'm going to work, I'm able to like really, and evenings, there's always time that I find to get stuff done somehow. It's just not as structured as it was when I had nap times that I could take advantage of.
So it doesn't feel like, oh, I'm doing work all the time, actually. Does it feel
Sometimes
like?
it does.
Yeah.
Sometimes, and the problem is like, and I think entrepreneurs and creatives understand this, like it never really shuts off in your brain.
No, never.
No. So even if you're like sitting there telling yourself, I'm not going to work right now, I'm just going to read a book, your brain is already thinking of other things that you should be doing. And I've gotten good at different phases of my business of learning how to just make a list so that I can turn it off, just turn my brain off and get to it when I have the actual time. And I'm starting to recognize my own habits. I'm very like obsessive compulsive, like truly in all areas of my life. And so I've noticed my triggers and I've noticed my patterns. And so I'm very careful to observe when I'm starting to spiral, because I'll do that with our house with like, I'll go days of just massive cleaning sprees and organization where I just black out. And my husband's like, everybody leave mom alone. Like she's doing her thing. And I'll do the same thing in my business where I just essentially lock myself in my room and I'm just in the zone and I have to get it done or I cannot function and everything else is irritating. And so those aren't the ideal, but sometimes that's what I do and I get a whole bunch done. And then I take like a break for a week where I don't even want to look at my business because I finally got that thing out of my head, or I don't want to clean anything because I finally got that thing out of my head.
Oh, I lost my I had two questions. That's the first one is, I'm just writing some of the keywords down. Rituals. Do you have any morning or evening rituals that keeps you in this mindset of this is my business, I really love it, I'm building it stronger, I'm building myself stronger? Do you have any rituals that you do?
Yeah. So I have personal and then we have like a family ritual, because I feel like that's been the biggest thing that's anchored us in having this consistent morning routine every single day. It doesn't always go perfectly, but for the most part, it actually does happen pretty consistently. It happens every single day, just the level of how much everybody pays attention varies.
Yeah.
I wake up before I do anything. I have really always included like scripture and spirituality in everything that I do. I believe in God and I believe the creativity and all the inspiration comes through him. And that's also kind of helped me not fear that I'm being selfish when I do these things, because I know that he's blessed me with my gifts and talents. And I know that he has a much greater vision for my life than my limiting self can see sometimes. So I've noticed a drastic change and an increase in the productivity and the things I create and do when I begin my morning with studying scripture and with prayer. It's sometimes not as long as I would like to spend because I have to get things done. If I could, I would spend hours just in that space, and feeling that peace. But I do that every single day because I've tried to do it without that, and it just isn't the same. No. And then as a family, we do the same thing. We have prayer together every morning. We read scripture together every morning. We have, essentially a morning devotional, and it creates this peace in our home and this understanding that our number one goal as a family is to have a home where there's not contention. And that's if you've raised children, that's incredibly difficult.
Yeah.
But because of all that needs to happen in this house, when I started my first business, we lived in this little 2-bedroom apartment with all 3 kids. And it was so crazy. We were so cramped in. And I remember just feeling like I could almost be outside and look at the apartment and just see this like steam coming off the walls because of all the creative energy and all the magic that was happening inside that little tiny apartment. And I think of that now, even in our home, where there's so much happening here. There's such an energy surge. There's all between me and my children, my husband, there's all this creative, producing stuff happening. And because of that, we have to protect our peace. We have to know that we're doing this centered in something good and something wonderful. And so we have to start that out because we have to protect ourselves and our home from what could become an extremely stressful, like volatile situation. And so that helps us all be on the same level. It helps us all understand that the goal for mom and dad having a business and homeschooling and all those things is for us to grow closer and for us to be happy and for us to create peace and be able to take that out to the world. So that is absolutely something that keeps us. And we pray again at night as a family. That's not as consistent as the morning, but we try. Sometimes it's just like, go to bed.
Great intentions. That's
Yes.
great. Yeah. Really love it. So you have the prayer and the connection in the family. It's kind of a connection also.
Yeah.
Just by sitting there doing the same thing. That's a meditation actually in some kind.
Yeah,
that's great.
Is.
That's a good ritual. Do you have anything that you do for yourself? Do you have the time to go? I don't know if you have nature around you or where do you like
we have
to go?
Beautiful nature.
Yeah, when you want to find peace, where do you go?
Okay, so let me just before I even explain that, say I used to be such an adventurer and I used to think like all the experiences needed to be big, like to get centered, to feel peace, I need to like go to the beach. I need to be by water. I need to do this. And I am a water person. If I were to be an element, it's definitely water. It really does change everything. But everything that I've gone through in the last several years has taught me that you can find peace in your closet as long as you can get centered. The same feelings that you have on the beach can be created through your mind, through opening that up. But I am around nature and I love living in Tennessee. I didn't answer that question earlier. I'm in Nashville, Tennessee, and it is green here. And winters are hard for me here because everything dies and there's not a lot of green. And so
it's like Denmark.
Yeah. So I've trained myself to see beauty in even like the gray, like the trees when they're dead, and I think that's actually very beautiful, and having experienced that gray season myself where everything really did kind of die and everything fell off and fell apart, and seeing that in and of itself was really, really wonderful. And that gave me the ability to grow and to sprout something new. And so I've really trained my eye to see beauty in even the things that I used to consider ugly. So getting outside, walking, we live in a neighborhood that has a lot of hills that I get so angry at when I'm walking up them, but I feel so good after I've done it, challenging myself. So yeah, I definitely utilize nature and being outside. I love tall trees. I love Hawaii. I've lived there for just like a summer one time, and it was the best time of my life. Yes. Yeah. I love it. That's my happy place.
That's my happy place. What if we think about nature, when nature turns brown and maybe some sad colors, gray, you said gray. What if we think that all this energy and power, it goes to the roots just to come up again? Yeah. Then we might see it differently, because it's the same about us. When we have to have peace at moments, we have to find places we go, or thoughts we have to have. They might be gray and brownish, or what we call it, but it turns out to be something else afterwards. And that's what's great about closing your eyes, because you can actually see whatever you like when you close your eyes. And that's great. But I would really love to see Nashville, Tennessee, also because I have family there.
Well, you're welcome to come anytime. Come in the spring or in the fall. Don't come when the mosquitoes are in full.
No. When are the mosquitoes there?
They're here all summer long.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, you're fine if you're not around all that beautiful lush greenery, but that's what you want to be in. So yeah, spring or fall. They're usually not alive yet in the spring, and they're gone in the fall.
And great. Kirsten Tyrrel, she's off. I cannot see your face. Maybe you're back in a second. I don't know. Your name was on.
I have a feeling the camera that I was using might have died.
Oh no.
You're back. Yeah.
You're
I'll have to use
back.
a different camera.
Great. I'm glad you're back.
We'll
But
move here.
Kirsten, I really loved your story, even though I'm a Danish thinker and it went very quick.
Sorry.
I got it all. And I have some notes. And under this video, I would put some of these notes in to tell just a little bit about who you are and what you're doing and what we talked about, what people can experience by listening to this and see us. And then I think about this June or July, I hopefully have 20 videos with great women, moms making magic, and they will be able, the audience would be able to see these videos by clicking a link. So we will also put your homepage under this video and whatever you would like us to give the audience. And also, if you have anything special coming up in the summer or anything you would like us to put under this video, just text me and I will put it in. Perfect. But thank you very much for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It was so fun. You have such a beautiful smile. It was so fun to chat with you.
And you
thank you for letting me share my very crazy, weird story. And I hope that it's inspiring to people listening. I hope that, you know, they feel motivated and not terrified of failure, because it's worth it. Even though there are times when you're like, this is not worth it. It's so worth it. It's so much better than to look back and wonder what could have been. So
it's actually a great medicine to go deeper inside and think, what are my inner values? What are my dreams? Do I have any dreams? And if you don't have, get them.
Yes.
Find your dreams. Good. Amen. But have a nice day in Tennessee.
You too. Thanks. You too in Denmark. I'm
Thank
sure
you.
We'll connect soon.
Thank you. You too. Bye, Kirsten.
Right, bye.